What is the creepiest biology fact that is not known by most people? Story 1. Your eyes have their own mini immune system. Basically, the cells of the eye can fight infection on their own, meaning that they don't need the body's main immune system for protection. If your immune system locates your eyes, it will mistake them for invaders and attack them, potentially leading to blindness. Another is that cannibalism is rife throughout the animal kingdom. If male lions happen upon females who've already mated and are successful in ending the mate, they will also end his cubs. This is done in order to make the female inclined to mate again so that they can father their own. Lions are carnivores and therefore will not waste meat, even that of other lions. Hence, they will eat the dead cubs. A final is that there's no given chance you won't die of an aneurysm. Seriously, you can be perfectly healthy in no specific risk group and can all of a sudden just drop dead without warning. It's highly unlikely, but it has happened. Story 2. If your corpus callosum, the part of the brain that connects the two hemispheres, is severed, you create a situation where two conscious brains control one body. This is known as split brain or callosal syndrome. Some people who have split brain report that choosing clothes in the morning can be difficult. The reason why is that their right hand will choose one shirt while their left hand will choose another, because their left and right hemispheres can't communicate properly. They will also develop compensatory behaviors. When the right hemisphere makes a decision the left doesn't agree with, sometimes their left hand will touch the right side of the body to communicate the disagreement. Split brain or callosal syndrome is a type of disconnection syndrome, when the corpus callosum connecting the two hemispheres of the brain is severed to some degree. It is an association of symptoms produced by disruption of or interference with the connection between the hemispheres of the brain. The surgical operation to produce this condition, corpus callosotomy, involves transection of the corpus callosum and is usually a last resort to treat refractory epilepsy. Story 3. We have about 500 million neurons in our gut. Not really creepy, but interesting when you think about the mind-body problem and how we look at consciousness being exclusive to the brain. It's not like we are consciously aware of brain cells in the stomach. You aren't consciously aware of breathing or heart rate or the reversal of the upside image of the retinal or that you are wearing socks or how many motor units it takes to do even a voluntary skeletal muscle movement. Number of neurons has nothing to do with consciousness. The information that you are not conscious of far, far outweighs that which you are conscious of. A or so of cortex in the whole brain. Story 4. You might have heard that cockroaches can survive a few days without a head. While this is true, this tale is far more gruesome than that. You see, this fact is not exclusive to cockroaches. Due to the way that an insect's nervous system is, they don't need their head to survive in the short term. Each of their limbs has an independent, albeit rudimentary, brain, ganglia. It is not actually a brain, but functions as one, that can function without the central brain being present, meaning that any insect can survive without a head for a couple of days, only dying due to the lack of food and water. It doesn't stop there, though. Headless insects are, in essence, still alive. Whatever rudimentary consciousness or awareness that might have been with the insect is long gone, but the body remains alive. And because each limb has an independent brain, it means that the body will continue to respond to stimuli. Poke a headless cockroach and its limbs will walk forward, albeit more slowly than usual. Poke a headless earwig and it will reach its pincer around to pinch your finger. Because headless insects have no conscious control unit, the limbs react solely with instinct. So if no stimuli is present, the headless insect will stand perfectly still. It's creepy because headless insects are one of the closest things nature has to living zombies. I'd say cordyceps infections in insects are the closest thing, but that's a well-known infection. Story 5. Much to the chagrin of evolution misunderstandings and deniers, we've never and will never suddenly find a duck being born from a frog. But we have in the past 100 years found at least one instance of a brand new species of single-celled organism being born from humans. In 1951, a doctor took a biopsy of some cervical cells that had become cancerous due to HPV from a woman named Henrietta Lacks and found that these cells, now called HeLa cells, were able to continue dividing and living outside of her body just fine. These cells have 76 to 80 chromosomes instead of the normal 46 humans typically have. And since these cells could be cultured outside a human body but were still essentially human DNA, They became a widely used test medium for various kinds of medical research, including the early development of the polio vaccine. These cells have become so prevalent in medical research and grow so readily on their own that they have been found to very often show up in and contaminate various medical experiments and equipment that wasn't supposed to have any HeLa cells at all. And so, given that they have 76 to 80 chromosomes, reproduce on their own, and do not reproduce with other normal human cells, they, for all intents and purposes, are a new species. Story 6. Neuropathic pain can be endlessly bad and almost totally unresponsive to any painkillers but IME, dissociative and sedative substance. There's no time limit to it either. Because it's nerve pain without a physical cause, it can't and won't be treated, and your brain will continue to send "we are in agony" signals to your entire body anyway. Again, because it's neuropathic, there's no limit to the level of pain it will make you think you're in, and your body doesn't pass out to cope, or any of the other vaguely reassuring things you delude yourself into believing about extreme pain before experiencing it. It can feel from anything such as a mild but pervasive itch to a burning fire throughout your entire body. Similar to cluster migraines, it has a high mortality rate due to patients taking their own lives to escape the pain. I'm not aware of any way yet we know to predict, prevent, or treat them. Story 7. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis is an insect pathogenic fungus discovered by the British naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace in 18. Wikipedia of the fungus itself. This fungus right here, it drains nutrients from ants, then pilots them by stimulating their brain. Not only is this called zombie ant fungus, there is nothing stopping a wild strain of it from reproducing and creating a variation that works on humans. Not that I know of, at least. Since evolution is just random genetic mutations that sample a certain survival strategy, there is a possibility, no matter how slim, that this becomes a zombie human fungus. Story 8. Think of a cousin of the friendly woodlouse or pillow bug, but which lives underwater. This order of animals is called isopods, and they are actually crustaceans. A genus of such underwater louse called Cymathoa is parasitic. One species has a very creepy trick. Cymathoa exigua is a parasitic isopod which specializes in sucking away the blood of a tongue in a live fish until the tongue falls off. It then attaches itself to the stump in the mouth, think alien, replacing the tongue. The fish can then live out its life with a tongue-sized louse in its mouth. Story 9. 2 out of 3 of all. Myocardial infarctions are silent, meaning that there are no signs or the symptoms are not typical of them happening or that they're about to happen, meaning someone can suffer from it despite being seemingly okay. On that topic, if you manage to catch a myocardial infarction, you might not want to reestablish blood flow to the parts affected by ischemia. This is due to a possibility of reperfusion injury, where you can cause further damage by trying to heal and establish an oxygen supply to the affected areas. However, if you don't do it, the heart will be left with literal permanent scars, called fibrous tissue, which have no contractile function. If big enough, this will in turn lead to heart failure down the line. Moral of the story? Eat your veggies and exercise. You never know when you'll just drop dead due to a fat deposit gone wrong in your coronary arteries. Story 10. There is a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii that infects mice and essentially makes them unafraid of or attracted to cats. The parasite reproduces inside the cat after the mouse is eaten and is later found in their excrement. This parasite can infect humans with similar symptoms to the infected mice and likewise has no noticeable short-term symptoms. There have been some studies that show an increased chance of schizophrenia as a result of this parasite. Now imagine that if biolabs can make viruses, they can make mind-altering parasites that can infect entire human populations without any immediate symptoms. Story 11. Don't know if it's creepy, but it certainly makes you wonder. The world we experience is not real time. It's actually about 50 M's behind real time because of the time it takes your brain to sample information from the senses and then process it. We don't notice it because our awareness happens after that delay, so to us, it is live. Basically, our brain hallucinates our reality. That's also why the brain can't make the difference sometimes between real and fake. It's all just inputs to the brain. It's a supercomputer trapped in a box that is trying to make sense of its environment. If you are playing a video game and your character falls a great distance, you will experience an haute le coeur feeling when you are free falling in a roller coaster, even though your physical body hasn't moved. Just the first example I could come up with, anyways. Story 12, HeLa cells. Basically, medical researchers removed cervical cancer cells from a woman in the 50s named Henrietta Lacks without her consent. They didn't die off after several generations, which is super abnormal for human cells, cancer or not. Henrietta does not long after, but her cells have continued multiplying indefinitely since then. As a result of them being abnormally durable and practically immortal compared to other cells, they've been used in the development of many of the most high-profile vaccines and medical developments of the last 70 years, including the development of the COVID vaccine, HIV research, measles, HPV, and more. Meanwhile, Henrietta was never notified of the removal or use of the cells in her lifetime, and it took years before doctors notified her family. They have yet to receive compensation of any substantial kind. I don't know, creepy for me for several reasons, including but not limited to the idea that there's a self-replicating, immortal strain of human cells that we basically drag out to expose to every new virus or cancer that we discover. Story 13. You can die at any time. A portion of your brain blood vessels can simply collapse and fail, giving you a fatal brain bleed with a very low chance of recovery. Hemorrhagic strokes are actually quite survivable with modern medicine. The majority do not affect the parts of the brain controlling vital signs, although those at this region and base of the brain are individually the most likely to form aneurysms. Even then, with adequate sedation and interventions like craniotomy for clot evacuation, placement of extraventricular drains for CSF diversion, and endovascular insertion of coils to clot off the bleed, mortality and morbidity from brain bleeds can be precipitously reduced with prompt treatment. Hemorrhagic strokes hurt like hell, but clot strokes are painless. The real terror is having an ischemic stroke while asleep, where the damage is baked in for hours before you could even know to get help, if you are even capable of still doing so. I treated a man once who had a wake-up stroke on Christmas Day, and none of his family checked in on him for 3 days. Permanent paralysis of left arm and leg, swallowing and speech severely impaired for life. Story 14. During early stages of pregnancy, the body is able to detect if the fetus will not be viable due to issues with its DNA and will abort. I'm talking very early, before you even miss your period. A lot of miscarriages happen without even being aware you were ever pregnant, which is also why it is recommended that if you're trying to get pregnant, to not test early, or you may have slightly increased hormone levels due to a recently terminated embryo, which will give you false hope. To be honest, I don't think it's disturbing. Just hella impressive that even our bodies will do what is best for us and the potential fetus when our politicians will not. Story 15. All our cells are the result of a continuous sequence of cell divisions, all the way back to the first living organism. After a cell division, there is no mother cell and a daughter cell. There are two cells which both are half of the mother cell, as it was before it started the cell cycle, at least genetically. After the division, the cells differentiate and many die off without producing further offspring, but that's beside the point. If you would take a skin fibroblast from your little toe, and if you would be able to reverse time, you could trace its lineage to see it was, at some point, a stem cell, which at some point was an embryonic stem cell, which at some point was a fertilized egg, which at some point was a sperm cell. The sperm cell was at some point a germline cell in your father, which at some point was a germline cell in your grandmother or grandfather, depending on which lineage you decide to chase. And if you keep going, you will, after a very long but uninterrupted sequence of cell divisions, end at the origin of life. Story 16. Really late, but I discovered this thing during my thesis. We were researching patients with neurological problems and people who had brain injuries, and we found a woman in her 30s that had had part of her brain removed. More specifically, the area that activates when you move your body. Well, she was moving and talking with just some minor missteps, and theoretically it was not possible. She was paralyzed. In the first 3 months after the operation, she was caught in a car accident, if I remember correctly. We were trying out a new scanner for the brain, and we found out that an area of the brain that wasn't supposed to work and control the movement was doing just that. The occipital area, usually controls the vision, was now working as a motor control area. The brain is really amazing. Story 17. Natural redheads require increased doses of anesthesia due to some connection with the mutated melanocortin 1 receptor. I'm a natural redhead myself and developed a fear of dentists because I'd always feel what they were doing. Eventually, I had an issue that couldn't be ignored and had to find a new dentist. At my first visit, he took one look at me and said, "You're a real redhead, huh?" "Yep, hygienist. Get me 4x the Novocaine." I knew I'd found my man, and he's been treating me ever since. Also shed my fears, since dental work is much less unpleasant when you're actually numb before they start. Story 18. The war that's constantly happening inside of you. Everyone knows about your immune system, but the sheer complexity of it is amazing. Like, your body has neutrophils, which are like the generic white blood cell that constantly goes around your blood vessels, seeking out foreign objects. But did you know there are cells called macrophages, which are like way better neutrophils? And the fact that neutrophils mostly swallow bacteria to end them, macrophages do this too, except they can swallow close to 100. You have stuff like dendritic cells, whose main goal is to be an early warning system. They swallow an invader, then and carry a piece of it back to T cells to activate them. Once they're activated, T cells swarm that specific invader and end anything that has that antigen. I didn't even name close to all of the cells that are doing a constant battle inside of you, 24/7, 365 days a year. So next time you have the flu or an infection, think of the little guys inside you who gladly fight the good fight. Story 19. Cutting the corpus callosum connects two brain hemispheres can produce some freaky results, such as your hand doing crap that your conscious mind is not aware of, writing a sentence, or scratching an itch without knowing, for instance. I saw a program back in the dark ages when I was a kid. It was all about the brain. One of the things they talked about was that procedure. They had a guy they were testing. One hand did better with creative things, the other did better with logic. At one point, they were trying to get him to do something with the hand that didn't have an easier time with it. I think it was something like stacking blocks. He wasn't supposed to use the hand that could do it better, but as if the hand had a mind of its own, it kept interjection itself. And at one point, literally grabbed the hand having a problem and moved it out of the way in an obvious frustration. Story 20. Your body can, in a way, evolve during your life to fit your needs. Say you are a New York City cab driver with a normal brain. You start when you are young and are very dependent on a map or directions from the passengers. As you continue to do this for years, your brain adapts to handle its new job. Areas of your brain in charge of spatial awareness and memory of roads starts to grow, building a map in your brain. MRIs have shown a significant increase. It's not just your brain, though. There's a village somewhere in the Mediterranean, I believe, where they adapt to living in water. Their homes are built on stilts in the water, and they are strictly pescatarian by necessity. Their eyes develop thicker outer layers for seeing underwater for long durations, as well as a huge lung capacity. Humans are amazing. Story 21. Most of our body never gets more than 20 years old. Our cells divide in a process called mitosis and then die. With the exception of your nervous system, the oldest organ in your body is the lungs. In terms of age of your cells, your skin never gets more than a few weeks old. Your mouth never gets more than a few days old. Essentially, the reason we age is not because the cells are old, but they lose their ability to perform functions as effectively as they go through the mostly genetically determined aging process. Your cells are only designed to divide a set number of times due to structures called telomeres. It's a little more complicated than this, but I'm not writing a textbook, nor am I qualified to do so. Story 22. We have an internal regulator that prevents us from using our full strength. Our muscles usually only work at about 60% max of what we are capable of. In extreme life and death situations, these regulators stop, and we are able to use our full strength. This is how the parts where people tipped over cars and similar come from. These regulators are because at full strength, we heavily damage our bodies. Essentially, you could lift something to the point where it is either lifted or your arm just breaks instead. I believe there has also been someone who ran so hard, his leg broke. Story 23. You are actually quite hard to end. Your body is able to fend off a lot of disease, repair damage it sustains, can sustain itself without external energy input by using energy stored in your body. It can even, to a degree, synthesize some of the vitamins. You are able to detect tiny changes in air currents with your skin, detect minute changes in ambient temperature, and react to it without you even knowing. Your ears can detect slight changes in speaking patterns and voice pitches, which can lead to you getting angry. There's so hundreds of thousands tiny detectors in your body and brain detecting certain substances. Kind of scary if your stomach walls wouldn't have a special kind of skin you'd digest yourself. There is something called the basal ganglia. It is like a block between your mind and the physical world. The- Keeping unwanted thoughts or actions from being executed by the body. I know most of this is quite simplified, but I tried to make it as approachable as possible. Story 24. You can sometimes taste smells depending on how strong the odor is. For example, at a crime scene and there's high amounts of blood, you'd unfortunately taste it. What is actually happening is as the molecules circulate in the air, diffusion for those that do know, and you inhale with your nostrils, those same molecules go into your nasal cannula. And before it goes into your lung, it then goes into your tongue, and that's what you taste. Another example is when you go into a cosmetic store and someone sprays perfume in your face as a way to pick a sale. And as you're choking, you resist the urge to punch them in their face. And as you're about to walk off, there's a weird taste in your mouth. Not all of it gets into your mouth directly. You just inhale too much tithe to the point you can taste it. But the question of the perfume may end if you accidentally swallow some. Not the best explanation, but I tried. Story 25. Your brain mostly kind of makes up your field of vision. Receptors on the retina can only register the color of the light in the very middle of the retina, the fovea. The fovea is also the only place on the retina where the density of the light receptors is high enough that you can register a clear, distinguished image. The rest is just kind of a blurry, black and white mess. Also, there are blood vessels that block the light reaching certain parts of the retina. And the round shape of your eye will make the edge of your field of vision seem closer than the middle. Oh, and because of the lens, the image is displayed upside down. What you actually register is a blurry, upside down black and white image with vine like black lines running through it, caused by the blood vessels. And only the middle part makes a small amount of sense. Your brain just makes the rest of it up. Story 26. Humans are the only type of animals that are able to or will ignore our instincts. If an antelope in the wild hears the slightest rustle or crack, it will bolt away. But if a person is about to walk into an elevator and they see a person in there that their instinct warns them about, it's most likely that the person will still go in. After being attacked, countless victims said that they got a bad feeling about the attacker, but they all said that they ignored it. If humans did listen to their instincts more, then there would be less people in prisons and less attacks.